The world had changed, though most people didn't fully realize it yet. On the surface, life seemed normal. Children went to school, workers went to their jobs, and cities buzzed with the familiar hum of daily life. But beneath the surface, a quiet tension was growing, one that could not be ignored. For decades, Earth had been watched. From the edges of the solar system, from the dark reaches beyond Pluto, distant eyes observed the blue planet. They didn't see just a planet of water and land. They saw potential, unpredictability, and a stubbornness that could not easily be tamed. The first warnings had come subtly. Ships of strange designs, moving silently through space, were noticed by Earth's early warning systems. Their intentions were unclear, but their presence alone was a threat. Satellites detected them passing near the outer planets, scanning, mapping, observing. Some scientists tried to interpret the signals, but the messages were cryptic and alien. Governments around the world debated what to do, some calling for caution, others urging confrontation. But most agreed on one thing: Earth could not afford to act recklessly. Still, the warnings became harder to ignore. Official messages came next, polite but firm. Humanity was told to stop expanding certain technologies, to halt experiments with new defense systems, and to limit space exploration beyond a certain point. The words were clear: you are being watched, do not provoke. But for most people on Earth, the warnings felt distant, almost unreal. Life on the planet went on. Cities grew, economies developed, and people dreamed of new horizons. Yet, behind the scenes, a global council quietly prepared. Scientists, engineers, and leaders came together in secret, understanding that ignoring the warnings could be disastrous. They called it Project Horizon, a plan that would protect humanity from a threat no one fully understood. The project was not about attacking others, but about survival. Every decision, every blueprint, every test was made with one goal in mind: to ensure that Earth would never be powerless. Even with these precautions, the atmosphere on the planet was tense. Citizens noticed more frequent alerts on their devices, more military drills, more simulations of emergency evacuations. Schools held special lessons, teaching children basic safety procedures in case of an extraterrestrial incident. Cities strengthened their infrastructure. But the most remarkable change was in people's minds. There was a new sense of awareness, a quiet understanding that life on Earth was no longer entirely under human control. One ordinary morning, the first real sign of danger arrived. A deep hum resonated through satellites orbiting near Jupiter. A mining vessel far from any human settlement reported unusual activity. Its crew, trained for deep space operations, tried to communicate with Earth Command. But before any instructions could be sent, a sudden explosion ripped through the vessel. Panic spread across Earth's communication networks as news of the incident reached the planet. Over 100 lives were lost in moments, and no one could explain why. The loss shocked everyone. Governments demanded explanations. Scientists scrambled for answers, and ordinary people struggled to comprehend what had just happened. The Galactic Council, the governing body of alien civilizations that had been observing Earth, sent a response. They called it a regrettable accident, insisting that the crew had made a misstep in space. But their words, carefully chosen, did little to calm human anger. On the contrary, they fueled it. For the first time, humanity felt cornered, humiliated and enraged all at once. Across the globe, debates raged. Leaders discussed whether to respond, whether to seek vengeance, or whether to strengthen defenses further. Yet there was one thing everyone agreed upon: humanity could not show fear. Earth had to stand united no matter what. Project Horizon moved forward at full speed. Military bases, research facilities, and hidden installations worked around the clock. Engineers designed new ships, scientists refined defense systems, and strategists simulated every possible scenario. Every day brought a new challenge, and every night brought more questions than answers. Even as preparations intensified, ordinary people continued with their lives, though the tension was palpable. In markets, in schools, in offices, whispers of fear mixed with whispers of hope. People began to understand the reality of living in a watched world, one where every action could provoke disaster. The streets of major cities were busier than ever, but there was a noticeable edge in conversations, a quiet vigilance in everyone's eyes. Parents worried not just about daily struggles but about something far larger, far more uncontrollable. In the midst of this growing tension, scientists studying space anomalies discovered something unexpected. Signals from beyond the solar system, once erratic, began to show patterns. They were subtle, almost imperceptible, but they suggested intelligence, a strategy, and perhaps even intent. Analysts worked tirelessly, decoding messages, searching for meaning. And though their findings were never fully revealed to the public, they were enough to make humanity's leaders even more cautious. The planet could not afford a mistake. One wrong move, one misinterpretation, could ignite a war humanity was not ready to fight. Despite the fear, there was also determination. Humanity had faced challenges before, from natural disasters to global conflicts, and each time people adapted, innovated, and survived. This was no different. Every citizen, knowingly or unknowingly, played a part in the defense of the planet. Farmers, teachers, doctors, engineers, each person's daily actions became part of a larger picture, a collective effort to ensure survival. Hope, like tension, became a constant companion. Night fell over cities that never truly slept. Lights glimmered in the distance, signaling life, resilience, and stubborn endurance. Above, satellites and orbital defense systems quietly monitored the skies. Somewhere beyond the farthest planets, alien observers watched and waited, unaware of just how much humanity had learned, prepared, and adapted. Earth, the once seemingly vulnerable blue planet, was slowly becoming something else entirely. A world that would not bow, that would not yield, and that would defend itself at any cost. And yet, for most people, life went on. Children laughed. Friends argued over small things, people fell in love, and ordinary moments continued as if nothing had changed. But beneath this ordinary surface, a silent readiness grew. Every citizen carried a piece of the planet's unspoken vow. Earth would survive. Earth would not kneel, and if pushed too far, humanity would awaken a force the galaxy had never imagined. In quiet moments when people looked at the night sky, they sensed it. The stars, beautiful and distant, were not entirely untouchable. Something larger was out there, watching, waiting. And Earth, the fragile yet stubborn world, was preparing to answer. Not with anger, but with something stronger: unity, ingenuity, and a resolve that no one could break. For the first time in history, humanity knew its place in the cosmos, not as a subject of fear, but as a planet that would fight, adapt, and endure. And so, Earth waited, quietly, nervously, but always ready. The calm before the storm was heavy, tense, and filled with unspoken promises. Every human on the planet, whether they realized it or not, was now part of something far bigger than themselves. They were part of Earth's last alert, a signal to the universe that this world, no matter what, would not be pushed too far. Life on Earth had changed quietly, but suddenly the planet felt smaller. Messages, warnings, and distant observations from beyond the stars had set the world on edge, but no one truly understood how fragile humanity's position had become. People continued their routines, going to work, studying, shopping, living. But beneath that normalcy, a silent fear grew. Something had been watching. Something had noticed. And now, the consequences of being watched were about to arrive. It began far from Earth, near the giant planet Jupiter. A small human mining vessel, sent to extract resources from the distant moons, was performing routine operations. Its crew was trained, experienced, and confident. They had followed every protocol, maintained communication with Earth Command, and operated in a calm, precise manner. Space had always been dangerous, but they trusted in their training. Then, without warning, disaster struck. A strange craft, unlike anything recorded in human history, appeared out of nowhere. Its shape was unusual, angular yet fluid in movement. It didn't respond to the human ship's attempts at communication. Warnings were sent, but the alien vessel moved faster than the human crew could react. Within moments, a sudden surge of energy ripped through the mining vessel. Explosions tore the hull apart, alarms blaring, lights flickering. The crew tried to escape, but there was nowhere to go. In a matter of minutes, the ship was destroyed. Back on Earth, the news spread like wildfire. Initially, disbelief reigned. How could a simple mining vessel, far from populated areas, be attacked? Was it an accident? A miscalculation? As details emerged, the truth became impossible to ignore. Over 100 lives were lost. Families were shattered. Communities mourned. And the alien message came through, cold and detached, claiming it was a regrettable incident, a mistake of the crew. The world's reaction was immediate. Outrage mixed with grief, confusion with fear. People demanded answers from their governments. Scientists worked around the clock, analyzing data from the destroyed vessel, trying to understand the nature of the attack. Military strategists debated the correct course of action. Should they respond? Should they retaliate? Should they hide and wait? The air was thick with uncertainty. Across nations, debates became heated. Leaders spoke publicly, urging calm, but in private, the tension was palpable. The threat was no longer abstract, it was real, personal, and devastating. Earth had always known that space exploration carried risks, but this was different. This was deliberate. This was a message. Humanity had been pushed. And now, the question was whether it would break or fight back. Amid this chaos, ordinary people felt the ripple effects deeply. Families gathered, trying to comfort one another. Children, unaware of the full gravity, sensed fear in adults' voices and saw the tension in the streets. Parents tried to shield them, explaining that accidents happen in space, but even their reassurances felt hollow. Communities came together in silent solidarity. Vigils were held for the lost crew, and messages of hope were written and displayed across cities. At the same time, Project Horizon, humanity's secret plan, shifted into overdrive. Scientists and engineers worked faster than ever before. Satellites were deployed, defenses were recalibrated, and communication systems were upgraded. It wasn't just about technology. It was about sending a clear message. Humanity would not be passive. Every human on the planet, knowingly or unknowingly, became part of this silent preparation. The attack also sparked a shift in perception. Humanity had always considered itself small in the vast universe, a fragile species surrounded by unknown threats. But the destruction of the mining vessel ignited a new determination. People began to realize that despite being observed, despite being weaker in technology compared to others, Earth had one advantage no alien civilization fully understood: unity. Humans, when faced with an existential threat, could think, adapt, and act together in ways no machine or alien calculation could predict. Messages from the Galactic Council, previously ignored by most, now carried weight. Earth's leaders received direct communication, polite yet unmistakably stern. The Council emphasized that humans were unpredictable, emotional, and dangerous if provoked further. The tone was clear: stop expanding, halt development, or face consequences. For a moment, the calm, collected composure of human diplomacy was tested. Could they respond with restraint, or would the loss of life push them into action? Meanwhile, the media played a crucial role. News outlets covered the tragedy in detail, humanizing the victims, showing families in mourning, and explaining the technical aspects of the attack. Social media amplified the emotional response, spreading stories of heroism, despair, and resilience. Ordinary citizens shared messages of solidarity, promising to stand together in the face of the unknown. The planet, though divided by borders, felt united in grief and determination. At home, people reacted differently. Some froze, terrified of what might come next. They double-checked emergency supplies, monitored news reports obsessively, and debated whether to move to safer locations. Others channeled their fear into action. Volunteers offered help to the families of the lost crew, Engineers and hobbyists worked on improvised projects, and students studied astronomy and physics with renewed purpose. Every action, big or small, contributed to a planet-wide resilience. The sea attack also revealed cracks in human society that needed repair. Governments realized that coordination was essential. Communication lines between nations were strengthened, not for politics, but for survival. Every decision, every plan, now had the weight of a potential global threat behind it. Humans were beginning to act like a single organism, not just a collection of divided nations. Yet even with all this, fear remained. People wondered what had triggered the attack. Was it truly a mistake? Was it intentional? Were there other ships waiting in silence, ready to strike? No one had answers. But humanity, as always, adapted. Precaution became routine. Every launch, every satellite, every space mission was monitored, calculated, and reinforced. Earth had learned that survival in the cosmos demanded both caution and courage. The tragedy also sparked new ideas about life and purpose. Philosophers, writers, and thinkers debated the meaning of humanity's place in the universe. Artists created works reflecting the vulnerability and strength of the species. Musicians composed pieces inspired by the sorrow and hope shared across the planet. Humans had always been storytellers, but now their stories carried the weight of survival, the memory of those lost, and the determination of those who remained. As days turned into weeks, humanity slowly began to regain balance. Life continued, but it was no longer the same. People were more aware, more vigilant, and more united. Every glance at the night sky reminded them of the fragility of existence, but also of their potential. The tragedy near Jupiter had shown them what could happen if they were unprepared, but it also showed them that even in loss, they could rise, adapt, and survive. Project Horizon continued in secret, its plans becoming more sophisticated. Earth's leaders understood that a direct confrontation might still come, but they were not naive. They prepared not for revenge, but for defense. Satellites were equipped with sensors, communication grids were fortified, and human ingenuity was applied to creating solutions no alien observer could predict. Humanity had always been underestimated. Now, they would ensure that miscalculation would be a costly mistake for anyone who tried to push them too far. And so, the world moved forward, mourning the lives lost, but learning from the events that had shaken it. Citizens adjusted to a new reality. Life on Earth was no longer just about survival on the planet's surface. It was about survival in the universe. Every person, in some small way, contributed to the planet's resilience. Teachers taught children not just math and science, but awareness, caution, and the importance of unity. Engineers built not just machines, but confidence that humanity could face the unknown. Scientists searched the stars, hoping to understand the motives of those watching. Even in the midst of fear and uncertainty, hope remained. Humanity had faced countless challenges before, from natural disasters to internal conflicts. This time the threat came from the stars, but the response was no different. Humans adapted, organized, and prepared. They learned to be cautious without being paralyzed, to mourn without giving in to despair, and to act decisively when necessary. As the weeks passed, Earth sent a message, not a threat, but a declaration of awareness. The planet had suffered, had mourned, and had learned. It was no longer the same fragile world observed from afar. Humanity had awakened, not in anger, but in understanding. They were ready to defend themselves if pushed, and the galaxy would soon realize that Earth was not to be underestimated. And so, the events near Jupiter became a turning point. The tragedy, the grief, the fear, they were all reminders of one truth. Humanity could survive anything, adapt to anything, and rise stronger every time it was tested. The mining vessel's destruction had shown vulnerability, but it had also awakened determination. Earth was no longer just a planet of people living ordinary lives. It was a planet aware of its place in the universe, a species ready to face the unknown, and a civilization prepared to rise if pushed too far. The quiet before the next storm had begun, and Earth was no longer waiting passively. Every citizen, every system, every action was so. The weeks after the attack near Jupiter were tense, but Earth had learned quickly. The planet was no longer just a collection of cities, nations, and people going about their daily lives. Every action, every decision, every invention carried a purpose: survival. Humans had always adapted to challenges, but now the challenge was unlike anything they had faced before. It was not a storm, not a famine, not a war among themselves. It was something larger, something distant and yet terrifyingly close. The universe was watching, and Earth was no longer willing to be passive. The governments of Earth, working together in ways they never had before, decided it was time to send a message. Not a threat, not a demand, but a declaration. Humanity needed to show that it had been pushed too far, that it had endured loss, and that it was ready to defend itself. The decision was difficult. Leaders knew that any message could be interpreted as aggression. Still, after the tragedy that had claimed so many lives, they realized silence was more dangerous than communication. Scientists, engineers, and communication specialists worked around the clock. The message had to be clear, concise, and unmistakable. It had to reach every corner of the galaxy where alien observers were likely watching. It had to convey strength without arrogance, warning without hatred. After weeks of work, testing, and refining, the message was ready. It would be broadcast using every frequency, every channel, every relay that could reach beyond the solar system. The words were simple, but the meaning was undeniable. Push us too far, and see what happens. When the message was sent, it reverberated across space like a ripple in a vast, silent ocean. Alien civilizations, some observing quietly for decades, received it instantly. For many, it was shocking. Humans, they had thought, were fragile, emotional, and chaotic. They had assumed Earth's people would respond with fear or submission. Instead, what came across the stars was calm, measured, and firm. Earth was awake. Earth was aware. And Earth was ready. Back on the planet, people felt a mixture of pride, fear, and anticipation. They had survived the loss of lives near Jupiter. They had endured weeks of uncertainty, and now they were taking a stand. Not with weapons yet, but with resolve. Ordinary citizens began to feel that their actions mattered in a new way. Every engineer refining a satellite, every technician monitoring communication lines, every teacher explaining safety procedures to students was part of a larger effort. Humanity was becoming a single organism, acting in unison to ensure survival. While the message traveled across the galaxy, Earth scientists worked on the next stage of preparation. They had already begun developing what was called the Aegis Protocol, a planetary defense system hidden from alien eyes. It was not an offensive weapon, not in the traditional sense. Instead, it was a network of satellites, energy grids, and defensive platforms that could neutralize threats before they reached the surface. Its existence was secret even from most human populations, known only to the leaders, engineers, and scientists directly involved. But its presence alone gave a sense of security, a feeling that the planet could stand firm if challenged. Despite this, fear lingered in the hearts of many. People were aware of how small Earth was in the vastness of space. They remembered the mining vessel destroyed without warning and the lives lost. They worried that alien civilizations would not understand the message correctly, that they would see it as a challenge, or worse, an invitation to attack. Parents watched their children closely. Teachers observed their students, and communities held meetings to prepare for potential emergencies. Life continued, but the shadow of what could happen was never far away. Still, hope was stronger than fear. Humanity had always survived against the odds. Natural disasters, internal conflicts, and even wars with other nations had tested resilience, and humans had adapted every time. Now that same spirit applied on a cosmic scale. People realized that while they were small in the universe, their ability to work together, to innovate, and to endure gave them a unique advantage. Alien observers could underestimate them, but Earth had learned not to underestimate itself. As the days passed, the planet became quieter in some ways and busier in others. There were no parades or celebrations. Instead, there were quiet moments of reflection, silent work in laboratories, and conversations filled with both worry and determination. In homes across continents, people spoke softly about what might happen. They discussed preparations, shared hope, and reminded one another that humanity had survived before and would survive again. Schools began teaching new lessons about space, communication, and cooperation, preparing the next generation to face a universe that was no longer abstract or distant, but very real and close. Human ingenuity became more evident than ever. Engineers developed ways to shield satellites from potential attacks. Scientists refined sensors that could detect alien movement far beyond the solar system. Communication specialists created systems that could send messages across vast distances almost instantly. It was a remarkable display of coordination and skill, a demonstration that humanity could solve problems no one else had solved before. And yet, the emotional side of humans remained as strong as ever. Fear, grief, hope, determination, all these feelings drove actions just as much as technology did. Families comforted one another. Communities held vigils for those lost on the mining vessel. Children asked questions, and adults tried their best to provide answers they did not fully have. Music, art, and writing reflected the mixture of sorrow and courage that filled the planet. Humanity's culture, its very spirit, was part of its defense. It reminded the galaxy that Earth was not just a collection of machines and cities. It was alive with people who thought, felt, and acted together. The Aegis Protocol, still under construction, became a symbol of readiness. Though most people did not know the details, rumors of a secret defense system spread in hushed tones. Scientists hinted at powerful new technologies capable of protecting the planet. Military planners emphasized that Earth would not seek war, but would defend itself if necessary. The combination of secrecy, preparation, and determination created a quiet tension, one that was felt by everyone on the planet, even if they did not fully understand why. As the message to the galaxy traveled, alien civilizations began reacting. Some were curious, intrigued by the resolve and intelligence of humans. Others were cautious, worried that any misstep could provoke a response they did not expect. Analysts on alien worlds discussed the broadcast endlessly, trying to interpret its meaning, to understand whether humanity was bluffing or fully capable. What they could not see was the human spirit behind it, the determination born from grief, loss, and centuries of survival. Back on Earth, life continued to flow in a fragile balance. People worked, ate, slept, and laughed, but every action carried a sense of responsibility. Engineers double-checked satellites, scientists analyzed data, and families practiced emergency procedures. Ordinary tasks became extraordinary in their importance. Every citizen, whether they realized it or not, was part of a living, breathing effort to ensure the planet's survival. The weeks turned into months. Earth, while tense, had begun to adapt to its new reality. Humans understood that their place in the universe was no longer passive observation. It was active engagement. They were aware of the eyes watching them, the judgments being made, and the calculations happening in distant worlds. And yet there was no panic. There was determination, unity, and a quiet pride in their ability to endure. Then, the first results of their message became apparent. Distant monitoring stations picked up changes in the behavior of alien fleets. Ships that had once loitered near the outer planets seemed hesitant. Signals intercepted from alien systems suggested caution, respect, and even fear. Humanity, through its message, had made a mark on the galaxy. They had shown that they would not be passive, that they had endured loss, and that they were capable of defending themselves if pushed too far. Despite this, humans remained humble. No one on Earth celebrated victory. Instead, they continued to work, refine, and prepare. They understood that survival required constant vigilance, that the universe was vast and unpredictable, and that they could never assume safety. This humility, combined with determination, made humanity stronger. It was not arrogance that defined them, but resilience and unity. Even in private, people felt the weight of what was happening. Looking up at the night sky, they saw stars that were not just distant lights but the eyes of observers. They felt a connection to the planet, to their fellow humans, and to something larger than themselves. It was a reminder that survival was not just about technology or strategy. It was about people, spirit, and the determination to endure, no matter the cost. The world had changed irrevocably. Ordinary life continued, but humanity had awakened in a new way. They were no longer passive, waiting for fate to decide their future. They had sent a message, prepared defenses, and learned the value of unity on a planetary scale. Every citizen, every family, every community contributed to this awakening, whether through work, study, or quiet vigilance. The tragedy near Jupiter had sparked something larger, a collective understanding that Earth could not be underestimated. And so, as part 3 of their story unfolded, Earth stood quietly yet firmly. The message had been sent, and the calm that had settled over Earth was fragile. Every person on the planet felt the tension, even if they could not name it. Life continued, yet in every city, every town, every village, there was an unspoken understanding. The world was being watched, and it would not be safe for long. People went about their daily routines, but behind every glance at the night sky there was a thought. What if the observers decided to act? The first sign of trouble came quietly at first. Satellites orbiting Earth picked up unusual movement near the edge of the solar system. Small alien vessels far larger than any human craft were moving into formation. Their numbers grew quickly, and their trajectory pointed straight toward the inner planets. At first, scientists and military officials debated whether it was a routine maneuver or a threat. But when their instruments detected energy surges consistent with weapon systems, the truth became undeniable. The aliens were coming. Across Earth, the planet's defense systems were activated. Project Horizon had anticipated this, but anticipation was not the same as experience. People were prepared in theory, trained for drills, but this was real. Cities went into alert. Communication systems sent messages to every citizen. Stay calm, follow instructions, and trust the defense protocols. Families gathered together, schools and workplaces shut down, and a quiet fear spread across the planet. But it was not panic. It was determination. Humanity had survived before, and they would survive again. The alien fleet arrived with terrifying speed. Ships moved through space like living organisms, sleek and silent, their surfaces gleaming with unknown alloys that reflected the sun's distant light. Observers on Earth could see them approaching, and the magnitude of the threat became clear. This was no small reconnaissance team. This was a fleet capable of overwhelming anything humanity had deployed so far. For a moment, the planet seemed frozen, holding its collective breath. And then, without warning, humanity acted. Satellites and orbital stations that had been lying dormant for years suddenly activated. Energy fields pulsed across the upper atmosphere, creating shields that deflected the alien fleet's first attacks. Sensors tracked every movement, and automated defense systems targeted vulnerabilities in the approaching ships. What had once been theoretical became real. Humans, for the first time, unleashed their secret defenses. The initial shock was immense. Alien vessels, which had likely expected a passive world, now encountered resistance. Electromagnetic pulses disabled systems on several ships, rendering them immobile in space. Human engineers, monitoring from control centers around the globe, adjusted frequencies, recalibrated targeting arrays, and coordinated defenses with precision that stunned even their own military leaders. Ordinary citizens watched as lights flashed across the sky, energy fields shimmered, and the reality of planetary defense became visible for the first time. Then came the next phase, the hidden platforms rising from beneath the oceans and mountains. These were massive human-built structures, long concealed, designed for moments exactly like this. Plasma reactors powered enormous launch systems, capable of targeting threats with incredible speed and accuracy. The platforms were not just weapons. They were a testament to human ingenuity, engineering, and determination. When they emerged, the world saw that Earth was no longer passive. The aliens struck first, sending beams of energy towards cities and defensive installations. But the humans had anticipated this. Shielding systems activated instantly, absorbing and redirecting energy while countermeasures targeted the source. The sky above major cities lit up with waves of light, not of destruction but of defense. For a brief moment, the planet itself seemed alive, responding to the threat with awareness, coordination, and strength. Humanity's coordination was unlike anything the aliens had likely expected. While the alien fleet operated as a single force, the humans adapted constantly. Engineers modified energy shields, technicians recalibrated targeting systems, and command centers relayed real-time instructions across continents. People in control rooms, living rooms, and classrooms alike became part of a planet-wide effort. Every action mattered, and humanity moved as one. Ordinary citizens watched the battle unfold from below. In cities, people gathered near windows, rooftops, and open fields, witnessing a fight that seemed like something out of myth or legend. Children clutched their parents' hands. Adults whispered prayers or encouragements, and the elderly, who had survived wars and disasters before, nodded quietly, recognizing the determination in human hearts that had always carried them through the impossible. The alien fleet, at first confident, began to hesitate. Their attacks were met with precision, their movements countered at every turn. Analysts intercepted communications between alien ships, hearing confusion and concern. They had assumed Earth would be easy to subdue, that humans would crumble under the first wave of force. But the reality was different. Humans were resilient, unpredictable, and united in ways no one beyond the planet could fully anticipate. As the battle continued, humanity began to push back. Targeted strikes disabled key vessels, while coordinated maneuvers forced others to retreat. Every victory, no matter how small, sent a wave of hope across the planet. Citizens cheered in streets, not in celebration, but in recognition that their world, their home, was defending itself successfully. Even amidst fear, pride emerged. Humans were witnessing a moment in history, their first true defense of Earth from an extraterrestrial threat. Scientists continued to monitor the alien ships, studying their technology, learning their weaknesses. Engineers modified platforms and satellites on the fly, constantly adapting to the changing battle. Communication networks relayed instructions instantly, connecting control centers across continents. Humanity's ingenuity shone through in every action, revealing a species capable of rapid adaptation, courage, and collective intelligence. Meanwhile, families and communities played a quieter yet equally important role. People offered support, comforted one another, and maintained the stability of society while the battle raged above. Hospitals prepared for potential emergencies, although the effectiveness of the defense systems meant few casualties occurred on the ground. Schools and workplaces remained ready to resume life as soon as possible, reinforcing the message that Earth was not only fighting, but enduring. The battle stretched on for hours, and the alien fleet began to realize something critical. Humans were not only capable of defending themselves, they were capable of learning, adapting, and improving in real time. Every attack they launched was met with an unexpected counter. Every maneuver they executed was anticipated or neutralized. Humanity's defense was dynamic, alive, and unyielding. As night fell across the planet, the battle continued in space. Lights from energy shields, countermeasures, and alien vessels created a spectacle visible even from Earth's surface. People across the globe watched silently, some in awe, some in fear, all aware of the historic moment unfolding above them. In that moment, humanity saw itself not as fragile, not as weak, but as strong, capable, and united. By the end of the day, the alien fleet had begun to retreat. Ships limped back toward the outer planets, disabled or hesitant to continue their attack. Analysts on Earth monitored every movement, ensuring that the threat was reduced but not gone. Humanity had proven something critical. Earth would not be an easy target. The planet's defenses were effective, and humans, when united, were unstoppable in ways few could have predicted. Citizens breathed a collective sigh of relief, but there was no celebration. There was gratitude, awareness, and a renewed understanding of humanity's place in the cosmos. The battle had shown that Earth was capable of defending itself, but it had also reminded humans that vigilance must never falter. Survival required constant preparation, intelligence, and unity. In the days following the attack, scientists and engineers analyzed every detail of the battle. Lessons were learned, improvements were planned, and Project Horizon became stronger than ever. Communities worked together to repair damage, provide support, and maintain morale. Even as life slowly returned to normal, the memory of the attack and the defense remained vivid. It was a reminder of what had been at stake and what humans were capable of when pushed to their limits. Families reflected on the courage of those who had operated the defense systems, the engineers who had worked tirelessly, and the people who had maintained calm and order during the crisis. Children asked questions about the battle, and adults explained in simple terms that Earth had faced a challenge and had risen together to meet it. Stories of ingenuity, bravery, and unity were told repeatedly, ensuring that the memory of the day's events would remain part of human history. Even the youngest understood, in their own way, that Earth had changed. The planet was no longer just a place of everyday life. It was a fortress of resilience, a world that would stand firm against any threat, and a species that would never submit lightly. Humanity had awakened something powerful, the ability to defend its home with intelligence, courage, and unity. And as night fell, with the alien fleet retreating into the darkness beyond the solar system, Earth remained vigilant. Satellites continued to monitor space, defenses remained on alert, and communities continued to recover. But there was also a quiet confidence in the hearts of humans. After the alien fleet retreated, the world felt a mix of relief, awe, and an unshakable sense of accomplishment. Humanity had survived the first test. The planet had defended itself, and the people had risen together in ways that even the most optimistic leaders had never fully imagined. Yet the moment was far from over. Across the globe, scientists, engineers, and citizens realized that what had just happened was only the beginning of a new chapter in Earth's history. The galaxy had now witnessed something it would not forget. News of the battle spread quickly. Satellites and communication networks shared images and data of the fight. Citizens watched in disbelief and pride as footage revealed energy shields shimmering across the planet, orbital platforms firing at approaching ships, and hidden launch systems rising from oceans and mountains. Ordinary people could hardly believe their own eyes. Humans had faced destruction, yet they had turned it back with precision, coordination, and courage. It was a turning point. The reaction among alien civilizations was profound. Analysts on distant planets observed Earth's tactics, noting the precision and adaptability of human strategy. They had assumed humans were disorganized, impulsive, and vulnerable. What they saw instead was a species that could think, adapt, and respond in real time. A species capable of turning loss into strength. Alien communications intercepted by Earth revealed worry, curiosity, and even a measure of fear. Humanity, they realized, could not be underestimated. Back on Earth, life began to settle into a new rhythm. Cities repaired minor damages, systems were recalibrated, and Project Horizon expanded even further. Engineers upgraded energy shields, satellites were redeployed, and hidden platforms were reinforced. Humans were ready, not only for another attack but for any unknown challenge that might come from the stars. Citizens understood the importance of preparation, even in their everyday lives. What once seemed ordinary, going to work, helping neighbors, learning in school, was now part of a larger effort to sustain and protect the planet. Communities shared stories of courage and ingenuity. People who had worked behind the scenes in control centers, laboratories, and defense hubs were now quietly celebrated for their contributions. Every action, no matter how small, had mattered. Teachers explained to children how humans had faced danger and adapted, turning what could have been despair into determination. Families reflected on the unity that had allowed Earth to survive and thrive in the face of a far greater force. The human response was remarkable not just for its effectiveness, but for its flexibility. Engineers and scientists worked in real time, adjusting strategies as new information became available. Every observation of the alien fleet's retreat was analyzed, every weakness noted, and every success celebrated quietly. The lessons learned would inform future defense plans and influence humanity's approach to space exploration for generations to come. Despite the success, caution remained. Earth's leaders knew that the galaxy was vast, and many civilizations still observed from afar. Some may have underestimated humans before, but the balance had shifted. There was a quiet understanding that Earth's resilience and ingenuity could not be ignored. Humanity had shown that it would not submit, that it would protect itself, and that it could awaken a power that no one had anticipated. As weeks passed, alien communication channels became more cautious in tone. Reports suggested hesitation in fleets approaching nearby systems, and intelligence indicated that even distant civilizations were reconsidering their strategies regarding Earth. Humans were no longer viewed as simply emotional or unpredictable. They were respected, even feared, for their ability to unite, adapt, and respond to existential threats. Humanity's reputation in the galaxy had fundamentally changed. On the ground, life adjusted to a new awareness. People moved through daily routines with renewed purpose. Children learned not just facts about their world, but about their place in a larger universe. Scientists and engineers became role models, demonstrating that intellect, creativity, and persistence were critical tools for survival. Families shared stories of the battle, not with prideful arrogance but with sober recognition of what had been endured and overcome. Humanity had learned to value courage, unity, and intelligence as much as technology. In parallel, Project Horizon continued to grow. Hidden platforms, now fully operational, were maintained and upgraded. Satellites formed complex networks across orbit, ready to detect threats and respond instantly. Artificial intelligence systems were integrated to assist with strategy and coordination, but human decision-making remained central. The lesson of the battle had been clear. Adaptability, unity, and human judgment were as powerful as any weapon or shield. The cultural impact of the conflict also became apparent. Artists, musicians, and writers drew inspiration from the defense of Earth, capturing the courage and unity displayed during the crisis. Museums and exhibitions displayed models of the orbital defense systems, while schools encouraged children to learn about the innovations that had protected their world. Humanity had transformed fear into creativity, danger into education, and survival into a shared story that would shape identity for generations. Emotion played a critical role. The grief from the mining vessel's destruction remained, but it had been transformed into resolve. Citizens felt a collective pride that stemmed not from dominance but from endurance. Communities strengthened their bonds, understanding that survival depended on cooperation, empathy, and shared responsibility. People began to see themselves as part of a planetary organism, where each action contributed to the safety and growth of the species. Humanity's strategy was not about revenge. The planet had proven it could defend itself, and that proof alone shifted power dynamics across the galaxy. Messages from distant systems suggested that alien civilizations were adjusting their policies toward Earth, seeking dialogue instead of conflict. The simple act of survival, combined with intelligence and coordination, had become a diplomatic tool. Humans were no longer just observers in the galaxy. They were participants who had earned respect through capability, resilience, and unity. Military analysts emphasized lessons learned from the battle. Every encounter, every defense maneuver, and every technological innovation was meticulously recorded. Training programs were revised to reflect the realities of defending Earth, and simulations prepared for scenarios beyond imagination. Even ordinary citizens played a role, participating in drills, learning emergency procedures, and contributing to the global effort to maintain readiness. Humanity's survival strategy had become a collective, inclusive effort. Communication networks were strengthened globally. Citizens were informed without panic, educated without fear, and inspired without arrogance. Governments shared details selectively, balancing transparency with security. People became aware of the magnitude of what they had accomplished and the responsibility that came with it. Humanity understood that survival was not a singular event. It was an ongoing commitment, one that required vigilance, cooperation, and courage every day. Even nature seemed to reflect the resilience of humanity. Cities that had been darkened by fear began to glow with activity once more. Farmers returned to their fields, workers resumed their tasks, and children played outside without forgetting the lessons of recent events. Life, though changed, continued with a renewed sense of purpose. Humanity had faced a challenge from the stars and had emerged stronger, wiser, and more united. The social impact was profound. People no longer saw themselves solely as individuals or citizens of a nation. They recognized their roles as part of a larger planetary community. Empathy, cooperation, and shared responsibility became more central to daily life. Ordinary actions, helping a neighbor, teaching a child, contributing to community projects, took on new meaning. Humanity had learned that survival depended not only on technology, but also on social cohesion, trust, and shared purpose. Across the globe, educators emphasized the importance of teamwork, problem-solving, and critical thinking. Children learned stories of innovation, resilience, and unity. Scientists and engineers shared their experiences in public forums, inspiring new generations to think creatively and act decisively. Humanity's narrative had shifted. They were no longer just survivors of disasters. They were a species capable of standing united against existential threats. The alien fleets that had once threatened Earth now approached with caution, hesitation evident in their patterns. Messages intercepted by Earth suggested that other civilizations were reconsidering interactions with humans. The balance of power had shifted, not through aggression but through intelligence, resilience, and unity. Humanity's response had transformed fear into respect, threat into diplomacy, and survival into a demonstration of capability that could not be ignored. In private homes, citizens discussed the events with a mixture of awe and hope. They spoke of courage, of sacrifice, and of the ingenuity that had allowed Earth to defend itself. Families reflected on the collective effort, recognizing that every individual had played a part, from engineers to educators, from scientists to ordinary people performing daily tasks. Humanity had learned the value of unity, the power of preparation, and the importance of shared responsibility. As the world continued to adapt, humanity recognized a simple truth. The events of the past months had changed humanity forever. Earth had faced a threat unlike any before, survived it, and emerged stronger. The lessons were clear. Unity, courage, adaptability, and determination were as important as any weapon, shield, or advanced technology. Every citizen had, in some way, played a role in this awakening. Life continued, but it was no longer ordinary. Humanity had looked danger in the face and had not blinked. The alien fleets had retreated, but their presence lingered in humanity's awareness. People could no longer see the night sky as merely distant stars. Each light was now a possible observer, each signal a potential message. Scientists continued to monitor every possible anomaly. Engineers kept satellites and defensive platforms ready, and citizens stayed vigilant without falling into fear. There was no panic, only a calm readiness born from the hard lessons of survival. Governments, once focused on division and rivalry, now worked together more than ever. Global alliances became more functional and cooperative. Every country shared information about defenses, strategies, and resources. International councils were strengthened, not just for political purposes but for the survival of the entire species. Humanity had realized that in the face of a cosmic threat, borders were meaningless. What mattered was Earth together as one planet. The Aegis Protocol, now fully operational, had become the cornerstone of Earth's planetary defense. Hidden platforms beneath oceans and mountains were maintained constantly. Energy shields surrounded cities and key infrastructures, and satellites formed a network that could detect threats light years away. Every improvement was shared with precision, and every person involved understood the stakes. Humanity had turned preparation into a habit, and vigilance into a lifestyle. Even as defenses strengthened, humans did not lose their humanity. Communities thrived in ways that reflected cooperation and care. People helped each other rebuild damaged infrastructure, supported families of those lost, and educated children on the importance of resilience and unity. Art, music, and literature flourished, inspired by the courage and ingenuity displayed during the crisis. Humanity had learned to transform fear and loss into creativity, strength, and shared knowledge. One of the most important changes was in perspective. Humanity had always known that the universe was vast and dangerous, but the events near Jupiter and the defense of Earth made that reality tangible. People now understood their fragility, but also their potential. No longer passive or naive, humans became aware that they could influence the universe not just with technology, but with unity, intelligence, and strategy. Every person, from children to elders, recognized their role in the planet's survival. Education adapted to reflect these lessons. Schools included lessons about space threats, planetary defense, and human ingenuity. Children learned about engineering, problem-solving, and critical thinking in ways that emphasized practical applications. Young minds were inspired by the courage of those who had defended the planet, learning that creativity and collaboration could overcome even the greatest challenges. Humanity had transformed fear into a teaching tool, preparing the next generation for a universe that would never be predictable or safe. Communications networks expanded globally. Citizens could receive real-time updates on space activity, defense system status, and educational content on survival strategies. Transparency was balanced with security, ensuring that people were informed without causing unnecessary alarm. Humans had discovered that knowledge, when shared wisely, was a critical tool for survival. Awareness and preparation became part of the daily rhythm of life, just as natural as eating or sleeping. Meanwhile, the alien civilizations that had previously observed Earth were adjusting their perceptions. They had underestimated humans once, but the display of ingenuity, unity, and defense had shifted the balance. Humanity was now seen as capable, resilient, and unpredictable. Interstellar communications indicated hesitation and careful planning on the part of other species, a clear sign that Earth's message had been understood. Push humanity too far, and the consequences would be unexpected and severe. Humans, for their part, had learned the value of diplomacy through demonstration rather than aggression. They had not launched a single offensive strike beyond their planet. Every action had been defensive, measured, and controlled. Yet the display of capability alone had earned respect across the galaxy. Humanity had discovered that power did not require destruction. It required intelligence, unity, and the courage to act when necessary. Families across Earth celebrated quiet victories. They reflected on how communities had come together, how people had helped strangers, how engineers and scientists had worked tirelessly behind the scenes. Every citizen, whether directly involved or not, felt pride in belonging to a species that had survived the unimaginable. This pride was tempered by humility, a recognition that survival required constant vigilance and learning. In cities and towns, ordinary life resumed, but it was now imbued with purpose. Children played outdoors with curiosity about the stars, asking questions about space, technology, and survival. Teachers encouraged them to explore these questions, nurturing creativity and critical thinking. Citizens engaged in volunteer projects, infrastructure maintenance, and community defense drills. Humanity had transformed fear into action, passivity into engagement, and danger into a shared sense of purpose. The global response was not limited to defense. Humans began investing in research, exploration, and understanding of the cosmos. New telescopes, faster communications networks, and advanced sensors were developed, designed not only for protection but also for knowledge. Humanity had realized that survival depended on awareness. Understanding the universe and those who might threaten it was just as important as building defenses. Project Horizon continued to evolve. Scientists and engineers worked in collaboration across continents, constantly improving satellite networks, energy shields, and defensive platforms. Systems were tested, refined, and upgraded with lessons learned from previous encounters. The goal was not merely survival, but readiness for any scenario. No matter how unexpected, humans had embraced the idea that preparedness was a continuous process, a vital part of existence. At the same time, humans did not lose sight of compassion. Social systems strengthened to ensure that citizens remained safe, cared for, and informed. Medical teams trained for emergency scenarios, communities supported each other, and citizens engaged in acts of kindness and cooperation. Humanity's response to crisis had become holistic, combining technology, strategy, and social resilience. Survival depended on more than machines. It depended on people working together, trusting one another, and staying vigilant without fear. The galaxy began to notice a profound change. Earth's reputation had shifted from a small, passive world to a planet of capable, united, and intelligent beings. Alien civilizations, once confident in their superiority, now approached Earth with caution and respect. Humanity's message had been simple yet powerful. Push us too far, and see what happens. That message had been heard, understood, and respected. Over time, Earth maintained its vigilance. Satellites monitored the cosmos, defense systems remained operational, and citizens stayed informed. But humanity also learned to balance caution with daily life. People went to work, attended school, explored, and created. Life had returned to a rhythm that felt normal. Yet everyone carried a quiet awareness of the planet's place in the universe. Humans had learned that survival required awareness, preparedness, and the constant engagement of mind and spirit. Art, literature, and music reflected this new consciousness. Stories of courage, resilience, and unity were told repeatedly, inspiring young and old alike. Cultural expressions became a tool for remembering lessons learned, reinforcing values of cooperation, ingenuity, and determination. Humanity's identity had been shaped not only by technology and strategy, but by the collective spirit that had allowed survival against overwhelming odds. Years passed, and Earth continued to thrive. The planet was prepared for any future threat, its people more united, more intelligent, and more adaptable than ever before. Humanity had learned that strength was not measured solely in weapons or shields, but in unity, creativity, courage, and the will to act when necessary. Every citizen had a role to play, from scientists and engineers to teachers, parents, and children. Survival was a shared responsibility, and humanity had embraced it fully. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Earth was no longer a passive world to be observed, underestimated, or tested lightly. Alien civilizations regarded humans with caution, respect, and a measure of admiration. Humanity's ability to adapt, endure, and defend itself had become a universal truth, known far beyond the solar system. The simple warning, "Push us too far, and see what happens," had become a declaration that echoed across the stars. Even as centuries passed, the lessons of that pivotal time endured. Humanity's approach to the universe combined awareness, preparation, intelligence, and unity. Citizens understood their responsibility to protect the planet, support each other, and continue learning. The legacy of survival became a guiding principle for future generations, inspiring them to explore, create, and defend their home with wisdom and courage. Earth had faced the unimaginable and survived,